Okay, so this is the Daf Yomi. We're in Avodah, Daf 8 for June 26, 2025, and Rosh Chodesh, everyone. So because this month has 30, this past month has 30 days, and this month coming up, because this past month has 30 days, we have a 2-day Rosh Chodesh. So it's the last day of the preceding month and the first day of the upcoming month. That's Rosh Chodesh. So anyway, we're closing in on the 3 weeks. So anyway, Rabbi Yehoshua holds that we derive from the case of Moses that one should first praise God in prayer and only afterward issue personal request. And Rabbi Eliezer holds that we do not derive from Moses how to act, since Moses is different, as his might is great. That is, he knew how to pray to God in this order. And the rabbis say the halacha is not in accordance with the statement of the sage, who says that one should issue personal requests before praying. Nor is it in accordance with the statement of that sage, who says the personal request should follow the prayer. Rather, a person requests his own needs in the blessing ending who listens to prayer. Therefore, Shomea Tefillah, right? It's right before may it be your will, and the Shemona Ezrei. So he who listens to prayer. Therefore, when Nahum the Mede stated that this is the halacha, he was merely concurring with the opinion of the rabbis. With regard to the halakhic ruling, Rav Yehudah says that Shmuel says the halacha is that a person requests his own needs during the Amidah prayer and the blessing ending Shomea Tefillah, or he who listens to prayer. Rav Yehudah, son of Rav Shmuel bar Shelat, says in the name of Rav, although the sages said that a person requests his own needs in the blessing ending Shomea Tefillah, who listens to prayer, that is not the only option. Rather, if he wishes to recite at the conclusion of each and every blessing personal requests that reflect the nature of each and every blessing, he may recite them. And actually, I encourage people to do that. It makes it more personal. And I think that it's my personal way of doing things. Like whenever we talk about the redemption and stuff like that, that I ask Hashem that I be a part of that I be a significant part of bringing the redemption. And everything else, like if you're praying for healing of somebody, pray that Hashem will be able to show you like other people that need to be healed, but also what you can do to help them. We should be here to help other people. That's what we're here for. We're here to help other people. We're not here to just be on our own or ourself, right? This world doesn't revolve around us. We revolve around everything that happens in this world, right? We're the ones that are supposed to act upon the things that we see and the circumstances that are in our life. Just like I say this quite a bit, a Jew doesn't need some sort of fortune teller or somebody to tell you how to live your life and take the next step, like a life coach or whatever. You look at what mitzvah there is in front of you. The mitzvah that you have in front of you is the mitzvah that you do. And if you take that and you act it out in every aspect and at every level of your life, you are put in the exact place that you need to be at the exact time, doing the exact things with the exact people. It is like, I don't know. People want to go to fortune tellers and what are these? I don't know. People that tell the future or whatever. People want to know what should they do with their life. They need a student counselor or whatever at their school. I think student counselors that's some of the most worthless information that anybody. They tell you what they want you to do based on the people who promote information for them, schools and whatnot. But anyway, if you want to know what to do the mitzvah that's in front of you. Like if this is Rosh Chodesh and you didn't say Hallel, you can say Hallel during the day. Just pick up your Siddur. If you missed it, if you forgot it, say Hallel, right? Go back and do it. All right, anyway. Similarly, Rav Chia bar Ashi says, although the sages said that a person requests his own needs and the blessing ending Shomei Tefillah, or who listens to prayer. If he has a sick person in his house, he recites a special prayer for him during the blessing of the sick. And if he is in need of sustenance, he recites a request during the blessing of the years. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says, although the sages said that a person requests his own needs in the blessing ending who listens to prayer, but if one who wishes to recite prayers and supplications after finishing his Amidah prayer, even if his personal requests are as long as the order of the confession of Yom Kippur, he may recite them. And this is actually why, whenever you have holidays, there's all types of poems and songs and stuff like that that are actually inside of the Shemona Esrei. It's because as long as you don't want to mess with the first three and the last three blessings. So the first three and the last three. The last three, it starts with, may it be your will. You don't want to mess with either of those, but the middle blessings, say as much as you can think. Like, have a note card. You know what I did with my Siddur? I took the inside cover, the hard cover, and I took like a hard card stock, and I glued the hard card stock to make a pocket, and I put note cards, 3x5 note cards in there. Have like all kinds of stuff to pray for. And you know what? I've kept note cards for over the years for all the different things that I prayed for. And it's, it's cool to look back and see, what did you pray for and what kind of stuff happened in the world. I mean, I see stuff in my life. So recently, I don't remember if I mentioned this, but basically out here, we started a nonprofit, and we're still waiting on the official confirmation of that. But, we started a nonprofit for the Jewish community because we need, there needs to be a Jewish community out in the middle of nowhere, right? There's enough people for it. But basically, you can't afford to live in the city. I mean, there's so many people, their businesses got destroyed over COVID, just like myself, out in the middle of nowhere. Okay, so let's start something. And it's going to last perpetually. It's going to last until Mashiach comes. It's going to outlive, me and my family, I'm sure. That's the way this stuff works. And it's one thing I do want to get into, because we actually touch on this in Avodah Zarah, is the idea of conversion after Mashiach comes. It's interesting. Conversion after Mashiach comes. So I will try to compile some sources and might even have a separate video on this, but we do touch on this, and we're going to touch on it fairly soon, maybe in a couple weeks here. I don't remember exactly which daf it is, but I think it's in the 20s. Anyway, it's very interesting. It's very interesting, everybody, so hold on. I will throw another bomb. A bomb of information. Anyway, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says, all the sages said that a person requests. Okay, I said that. Back to the mission, and the mission says, and these are the festivals of Gentiles. Kalenda. Well, let me grab it from the text. Kalanda, Saturnura, or Saturnalia, Karatesim, or Crotasis, in the day of the festival of their kings, in the birthday of the king, in the anniversary of the day of the death of the king. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir. And the rabbis say, every death that includes a public burning is a festival that includes idol worship. And any death that does not include public burning is not a festival that includes idol worship. But in the case of the day of shaving, that is a Gentile's beard, in his locks, and the day of his ascent from the sea, and the day that he left prison, and also the case of a Gentile who prepared a wedding feast for his son and celebrates on that day, engaging in business is prohibited only on that day and with that man. Okay. Back to the Gemara. The Gemara says, Rav Hanan bar Rava says, when are these festivals celebrated? Kalanda is celebrated during the 8 days after the winter solstice. And Saturnalia is celebrated during the 8 days before the winter solstice. And your mnemonic to remember which festival is that the one, in your mnemonic to remember which festival is that the one that occurs after the solstice is mentioned first in the Mishnah, and the festival that takes place before the solstice is mentioned after, as in the verse, "You have hemmed me in behind and before, and laid your hand upon me," Psalms 139, verse 5, where the word before appears before the term behind. Okay. With regard to the dates of these festivals, the sages taught when Adam the first man saw that the day was progressively diminishing, as the days become shorter from the autumnal equinox until the winter solstice, he did not yet know that this is a normal phenomenon, and therefore he said, "Woe to me, perhaps because I sinned, the world is becoming dark around me, and will ultimately return to the primordial state of tohu vavohu, or chaos and disorder. And this is the death that was sentenced upon me from heaven, as it is written, and to dust shall you return," Genesis 3:19. He rose and spent 8 days in fasting and prayer. Once he saw that the season of Tevet, the winter solstice, had arrived, he saw that the day was progressively lengthening after the solstice. He said, "Clearly the days become shorter and then longer, and this is the order of the world." He went and observed a festival for 8 days. Upon the next year, he observed both these 8 days on which he had fasted on the previous year, and these 8 days of his celebration as days of festivities. He, that is Adam, established these festivals for the sake of heaven, but they, the Gentiles of later generations, established them for the sake of idol worship. So it's interesting. There's a place called Adam's Calendar in Africa. It's a very ancient equinox calendar, and it's interesting because it makes me think of that, because it's named after Adam. That's a modern impression, no name to be used, but it's interesting. The Gemara raises a difficulty. Granted, according to the one who says that the world was created in the month of Tishrei, one can understand why Adam believed that the days were becoming shorter as part of his punishment, as he saw the short days of the winter and had not yet seen the long days of the summer. But according to the one who says that the world was created in the month of Nisan, he had already seen the difference between the short days and the long days, as the days in the month of Nisan become progressively longer with the passage of time. The Gemara answers, although Adam had experienced short days, he had not seen days that were this short, as in the days before the winter solstice. The sages taught, on the day that Adam, the first man, was created, when the sun set upon him, he said, "Woe is me, as because I sinned, the world is becoming dark around me, and the world will return to the primordial state of chaos and disorder. And this is the death that was sentenced upon me from heaven." He spent all night fasting and crying, and Eve was crying opposite him. Once dawn broke, he said, "Evidently the sun sets and the night arrives, and this is the order of the world." He arose and sacrificed a bull whose horns preceded its hooves, in the order that they were created, as it is stated, "And it shall please the Lord better than a bullock that has horns and hooves." Psalm 69:32. This verse is referring to the one particular bull whose horns preceded its hooves. And Rabbi Yehudah says that Shmuel says, "The bull that Adam, the first man, sacrificed had one horn in its forehead, as it is stated, and it shall please the Lord better than a bullock that has horns," or makrin, and hooves. The Gemara raises a difficulty. Isn't makrin plural, which indicates 2 horns? Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Mikeren is written, that is, the letter Yod is missing from the word, indicating that there was only 1 horn. Rav Matana says, since Rome established the festival of Kalanda on a specific date, and all the nearby towns are ruled by Rome, that is, they pay their tax to Rome and provide its needs, but do not themselves celebrate the festival, is it prohibited or permitted to engage in business transactions with the Gentile residents of those towns? Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says, it is prohibited to engage in business during the time of the Kalanda with everyone. Rabbi Yochanan says it is prohibited to engage in business only with its worshippers, whereas it is permitted to engage in business transactions with Gentiles who do not celebrate the festival. The sages taught in a Braita, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, although they said that Rome has established the festival of Kalanda and all the nearby towns are ruled by Rome, it is prohibited to engage in business only with its worshippers. Okay, the Braita continues, with regard to the festivals, Saturnalia and Kratesis, in the day of the festival, their kings, in the day on which the king was crowned, the halacha is that before the festival, it is prohibited to engage in business transactions, whereas after the festival, it is permitted. But in the case of a Gentile who prepared a feast for his son and celebrates on that day, engaging in business is prohibited only on that day itself and with that man. Rav Ashi said, we learn in the Mishnah as well, in accordance with the Rabbi Yochanan statement, that the prohibition applies only to Gentiles who celebrate the festival, not to people who are ruled by them. As the Mishnah teaches, with regard to the day of shaving his beard and his locks, and the day of his ascent from the sea, and the day that he left prison, engaging in business is prohibited only on that day and with that man. Rav Ashi explains the proof. Granted, the Mishnah specifies that the prohibition is limited to that day alone in order to exclude the days before and after it. But when it states that the prohibition applies only to that man, what does the Mishnah exclude? Obviously, the prohibition does not extend to all Gentiles, as it is a personal festival. Doesn't the Mishnah's ruling serve to exclude those who are ruled by him? Therefore, conclude from the language of the Mishnah that a prohibition extends only to Gentiles who celebrate the festival, not to those who are ruled by them. It is taught in Braita that Rabbi Yishmael says, Jews who are outside of Eretz Yisrael are considered to engage in idol worship in purity, that is, unwillingly. How does this occur? In the case of a Gentile who prepared a feast for the marriage of his son and invited all the Jews in his town, even though they eat of their own kosher food and drink of their own kosher beverages, and their own attendant stands before them, the verse ascribes guilt to them as though they ate of the offerings of the dead. As it is stated, in sacrifice to their gods, and they call to you, and you eat of their sacrifice. Exodus 34:15. Since Jews participate in a feast in which the Gentile sacrifice is offered to his idol, it is as though they partook of the offering themselves. So the Gemara asks, but why not say that the verse is criticizing the Jews only once they eat from the sacrifice? Rava said, if that is what is meant, let the verse say only, and you eat their sacrifice. What is meant by the additional phrase, and they call you? This indicates that the prohibition occurs from the time of the call. Therefore, during all the 30 days that follow the wedding celebration, if the Gentile invites a Jew to a feast, whether he said to the Jew that the feast is due to the wedding celebration or whether he did not say to him that the feast is due to the wedding celebration, it is prohibited to attend, as it is assumed the festivity is part of the wedding celebration. From this point forward, if he said to him that the feast is due to the wedding celebration, it is prohibited to participate. But if he did not say to him that the feast is due to the wedding celebration, it is permitted to do so. The Gemara asks, in a case where he said to him that the feast is due to the wedding celebration, until when is the feast assumed to be connected to idol worship? Rav Papa said, until 12 months of the year have passed since the wedding. The Gemara asks, and initially before the wedding, from when is it prohibited? Rav Papa said in the name of Rava, from the time when they cast barley into the mortars to prepare beer for the wedding. The Gemara asks, and after the 12 months of the year have passed since the wedding, it is always permitted to participate in a feast. But Rav Yitzchak, son of Rav Meshadashia, happened to come to the house of a certain Gentile after 12 months of the year had passed since his son's wedding. And he heard the Gentile giving thanks to his idol for the marriage of his son. He withdrew from the feast and did not eat there. The Gemara answers, Rav Yitzchak, son of Rav Meshadashia, is different, as he is an important person, and therefore his presence caused the Gentile to rejoice. The Mishnah teaches, in Kratesis, in the day of the festival of their kings. The Gemara asks, what is the festival of Kratesis? Rav Yehudah said that Shmuel said, it commemorates the day when Rome seized control of an empire. The Gemara asks, but isn't it taught in Braita, two festivals are Kratesis and the day when Rome seized control of an empire? This indicates that Kratesis and the day when Rome seized control of an empire are two separate festivals. Rav Yosef said, on two separate occasions Rome seized control of an empire. One occurred in the days of Queen Cleopatra, when they conquered Egypt, and one happened much earlier when Rome seized control in the days of the Greeks. The Gemara elaborates, as when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael, he said, the Romans waged 32 battles with the Greeks, but were unable to defeat them, until they formed a partnership with the Jewish people and finally vanquished the Greeks. And this is the condition that they stipulated with the Jewish people. If the kings come from among us, the governors will come from among you. And if the kings come from among you, the governors will come from among us. So the Romans sent the following message to the Greeks. Until now, we attempted to resolve our conflict through fighting battles. Now let us settle the matter by means of judgment. In the case of a pearl and a precious stone, which one of them should serve as a base for the other? The Greeks sent them in response, a pearl should serve as the base for the precious stone, which has a greater value. So the Romans further inquired if there was a precious stone and an onyx, particularly valuable precious stone, which one of them should serve as a base for the other? The Greeks answered, the precious stone should serve as the base for the onyx. Once again, the Romans asked, in the case of an onyx and a Torah scroll, which one of them should serve as the base for the other? The Greeks responded, the onyx should serve as the base for the Torah scroll. The Romans sent this response to them, if that is so, then you should submit to us as we have the Torah scroll with us, and the Jewish people are with us. The Romans are akin to the precious stone, and they are allied with the Jewish people who are akin to the onyx, and they possess the Torah scroll. The Romans therefore forced the Greeks to surrender and took over their world dominance. For 26 years, the Romans stood faithfully with the Jewish people, and from that point forward, they subjugated them. The Gemara asks, initially when the Romans acted faithfully, what verse did they interpret? And ultimately, when they subjugated the Jews, what verse did they interpret? Initially, they interpreted the verse where Esau said to Jacob upon their meeting, let us take our journey and let us go, and I will go before you. Genesis 33:12. In this verse, Esau equates himself to Jacob, prefiguring the initial Roman treatment of the Jews. And ultimately, they interpreted the verse that recites Jacob's response to Esau, let my Lord, I pray you, pass over before his servant, Genesis 33:14, demonstrating Jacob's subjugation to Esau and by extension that of the Jews to Rome. The Gemara asks, with regard to 26 years during which the Romans stood faithfully with the Jewish people, from where do we know that this was the case? That's interesting. 26 is the gematria of the name of God. It's also the atomic number of the element iron, which is what was significantly used by the Romans. With regard to the 26 years during which the Romans stood faithfully with the Jewish people, from where do we know that this was the case? The Gemara cites a proof. As Rav Kahana says, when Rabbi Yishmael, son of Rabbi Yossi, fell ill, the sages sent the following message to him. Our teacher, tell us 2 or 3 statements that you once told us in the name of your father. Rabbi Yoshi ben Chalafta, as we do not remember the statements precisely. So his father was Rabbi Yoshi ben Chalafta. Okay. So Rabbi Yishmael, son of Rabbi Yoshi, said to them the following statements that were passed down to him by his father. 180 years before the second temple was destroyed, the evil Roman Empire stretched forth over Israel and ruled over them. 80 years before the temple was destroyed, the sages decreed impurity on the land of the nations and on glass vessels. 80 years. 40 years before the temple was destroyed, the Sanhedrin was exiled from the chamber of hewn stone and sat in the store near the Temple Mount. The Gemara asks, with regard to what halacha is it necessary to know where the Sanhedrin would convene? Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi said, it is necessary in order to say that they no longer judge cases of fines. The Gemara asks, does it enter your mind that at this point the Sanhedrin no longer judge cases of fines? But doesn't Rav Yehudah say that Rav says, indeed, Baram, that man will be remembered favorably, and Rabbi Yehudah ben Bava is his name. As had it not been for him, the laws of fines would have been forgotten from among the Jewish people. The Gemara challenges that assertion. Would the laws of fines actually have been forgotten? Lest the scholars study them, so they would not be forgotten. Rather, his intention was to say that laws of fines would have ceased to be implemented from among the Jewish people, as they would not have been able to adjudicate cases involving these halachot due to a lack of ordained judges. This is because at one time, the wicked kingdom of Rome issued decrees of religious persecution against the Jewish people with the aim of abolishing the chain of ordination and the authority of the sages. They said that anyone who ordains judges will be killed, and anyone who ordained will be killed. And the city in which they ordain the judges will be destroyed. And the areas around the boundary of the city in which they ordain judges will be uprooted. These measures were intended to discourage the sages from performing or receiving ordination due to fear for the welfare of the local population. So what they're talking about is Semichah for rabbis. Okay, what did Rabbi Yehudah ben Bava do? He went and sat between two large mountains, between two large cities, and between two Shabbat boundaries, between Usha and Sepharam, in a desolate place that was not associated with any particular city, so that he would not endanger anyone not directly involved. And there he ordained 5 elders, namely Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehudah, and Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Yoshi, and Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua. And Rav Avya says that Rabbi Nehemiah was also among those ordained. When their enemies discovered them, Rabbi Yehudah ben Bava said to the newly ordained rabbis, "My sons, run for your lives." They said to him, "Our teacher, what will be with you?" Rabbi Yehudah ben Bava was elderly and unable to run. He said to them, "In any case, I am cast before them like a stone that cannot be overturned. And even if you attempt to assist me, I will not be able to escape due to my frailty. But if you do not escape without me, you will also be killed." People said about this incident, the Roman soldiers did not move from there until they had inserted 300 iron spears into his body, making his body appear like a sieve, pierced with many holes. It can be inferred from this episode that there were ordained judges who could hear cases of fines for many years after the destruction of the temple, in contrast to Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi's statement. So, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says in explanation, "Do not say that after the Sanhedrin was exiled from the chamber of hewn stone, they no longer judge cases of fines. Rather, amend the statement to say that they no longer judge cases of capital law, as the court does not have the authority to hear capital cases when the Sanhedrin is not sitting in the chamber of hewn stone." The Gemara explains, what is the reason that the members of the Sanhedrin ceased to meet in their proper place and thereby ended the adjudication of capital cases? Once they saw that the murderers were so numerous that they were not able to judge them and punish them with death, they said, "It is better that we should be exiled from the chamber of hewn stone and move from place to place so that offenders will not be deemed liable to receive the death penalty in a time period when the court does not carry out their sentences." The Gemara explains why a court may not adjudicate capital cases once the Sanhedrin left the chamber of hewn stone. As it is written, "And you shall do according to the tenor of the sentence," quote, "which they shall declare to you from that place." Deuteronomy 17, verse 10. This verse teaches that it is the place where the Sanhedrin resides that causes the judgment to take place. In other words, if the Sanhedrin has abandoned its proper place, the chamber of hewn stone, all courts must cease judging capital cases. Okay, the Gemara returns to the earlier comment of Rabbi Yishmael in the name of his father, Rabbi Yoshi ben Chalafta, that the Roman Empire ruled over Israel 180 years before the second temple was destroyed. The Gemara asks, did Rome rule over Israel for 180 years before the destruction of the temple and no more? But didn't Rabbi Yoshi the Great, that is Rabbi Yoshi ben Chalafta, himself teach? And then you'll have to wait for it tomorrow. It's talking about the Persian Empire, which ruled the world before the destruction of the temple, continued to do so for 34 years in the presence of the temple. But anyway, I want to make a statement here, and I don't remember what it was.